This morning, we woke up to news coming out of the Biden administration that was difficult to understand in terms of the specifics initially. But if you're like me, you greeted the news with a wait, they can do that? And of course, I'm talking about the announcement that $7 billion that apparently had been deposited by the former Afghani government was being taken by the Biden administration, or effectively like through our government, to then be divvied out to a couple of different groups. All of this is apparently a thing that can happen. But I'm gonna preempt Brett and say they were so worried with whether or not they could.
They didn't stop to think they should.
There you go. That is, I think, sort of the moral implication of this. But let's give you a little bit more information about what's actually going to happen and the case that they make what they're doing. So the administration said that the move was the first step in what will likely be a lengthy legal process to set up a trust fund and transfer the money from the Afghan central bank to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. If transfer of the funds is ultimately cleared by the courts, half of the funds will be made available to September 11th families pursuing legal claims against the Taliban, and the other half will go to humanitarian assistance for the Afghan people. Now, the Taliban, which now controls Afghanistan, has claimed that money, but they don't have any direct way to actually access it. So it's kind of a thing of, I guess they can say that, but if the US decides, nah, it's ours, then there's nothing the Taliban can do about it. The Fed is saying somebody needs to step in because with the government that deposited it no longer existing, there is no one who clearly has a legal claim to the money. It is possible that there is no one who can make a legal claim to the money. So I guess it just gets to be up to the Biden administration. And I understand that the divvying up of the $7 billion, half going to families of victims of September 11th, half going to the Afghan people, that it's like when a PR like a company is responding to some scandal by saying they're giving $10,000. Somebody like it's an attempt to make you be like, well, maybe this is okay, but that was money that was deposited by the Afghan government. It is, whether you can point specifically to how the money of the Afghan people,
like Sean, how are you gonna give it to them other than the way that they said they're gonna distribute the other half? I love this story. This is the other
half, sure, but what about the other half?
Processing fee. You never bought tickets at Ticketmaster? Half of it's a processing fee. Like you never had a DoorDash? You're paying twice as much just to ensure that the money doesn't go to a local business.
Oh my God. Okay, well look, Brett is doing his thing where he's making light of the news, but look, I understand it. It's the families of September 11th victims, which obviously we have a massive amount of sympathy for. That does not mean though that our compassion for who else could benefit from the money should be short-circuited just because the people who will, in theory, be getting it, although God only knows when or how much of it would actually go to them, seem sympathetic. Do they deserve money for their experience? Yes, definitely. I would like to raise a question. Why this money?
Because Afghanistan is next to Iraq, which is responsible for 9/11. Idiot.
Okay, that was very, very stupid, and also basically sums up like 10 years of our government propaganda.
That's what I'm saying.
Why this money?
Let me just get to the point. I just want to say, like, this is my favorite story. I'm so glad that it's leading off the show because it shows how bonkers the universe is right now. How bonkers post-fact Trumpian economics and politics the world has become. This is a Trump move, dude. Like, and this is a Trump move that resonates with people. Now, here's what's gonna happen. Biden thinks he's won politics today and is spiking his football being like, we're gonna keep the oil, like what Trump said, but we're gonna keep the money from the Afghan government, who was the people who let us down and allowed 9/11 to happen as we figured out through, letting Al-Qaeda operate out of Tora Bora or whatever, okay? So that is the logic at work here. Biden thinks he's gonna win people over, and I think he will. I think there's a lot of people who are like, that is an awesome flex by Biden. A lot of water cooler politics people are gonna be like, what a huge flex. We took that money from the Taliban and we gave it to the victims of 9/11 because of there's the two things close to each other in the word cloud of me barely paying attention for 25 years of politics. Now he's still going to lose to. There's still going to be Republicans, I guarantee you, who come out and say like, "Why don't you give them to the victims of the families of people, the families of the victims of people who died when we pulled out sloppily from that country?"
Yeah. Why don't you give it to the families of the people who died from your vaccines? Yeah, no, this is, so as you said, this is effectively Trump's take the oil thing. Or at least there doesn't seem to be a lot of space philosophically between those two things. Y'all are bad, you have something, now we do. That is effectively what it is. If Trump had done this exact thing, my gut is to say that Fox would love it, but I'm not 100% sure that they would, because half still theoretically is going to the Afghan people and they would have a problem with that. But they would love taking the money. They will find some way to attack Joe Biden over this. Not the way that we are, which is, how dare you? This is the money of the people of that country. And oh, by the way, they're gonna really need it right now. But they'll find some way to say that he's secretly doing this so that George Soros, China, Mao, something. I don't know, but it'll be nonsense. I do want to remind you though, as we just alluded to, the UN warned last month that 23 million Afghan people are in dire need of assistance and has launched a more than $5 billion funding appeal for Afghanistan. UN's World Food Program says that 8.7 million are at risk of starvation. Millions of girls are not enrolled in school, and food prices are rising. Of course, the famine is part of that, but they're certainly going to need money to deal with it. The money that will be given from this, of course, won't come fast enough to have any immediate impact on this issue. But long term, they're going to need money. And I understand, look, sending it to Afghanistan poses certain risks. Obviously, it is a country that is now governed by the Taliban. It's a Taliban that says that it's reformed in some ways. It has hardly been time enough to know how much of any of that is true. That said, they are in charge. They are also in charge as a predictable consequence of our choices. So to just take the money and be like, good luck, that seems wrong in so many different ways.
It doesn't to me. I hear this, I see this story from a strictly political messaging perspective, and I say, what you gonna do? Say we shouldn't give money to the victims of 9/11? That's the one thing, like Jon Stewart identified that as this, this is something that everyone's gonna fight for. And this is vaguely American to do.
So if Biden were to propose like a new 1% tax on billionaires to be given exclusively to the victims of 9/11, like, I'm sure they would find some way. I think there's contextual stuff they will like about this, but
I prefaced everything with this is how bonkers we are right now and how weird and strange. This is the kind of thing where they use the word treasure in like a very serious headline.
They do.
This is the treasure left over from the legacy of the changing of the regime in Afghanistan. Like, we're in a weird world, but I think politically it's a win. Politically it's a win to say, yeah, so the Taliban has it now. We don't like them. I'm not gonna trust the Taliban to magnanimously give money to people door to door. It's not gonna happen. The UN, we're giving money and we're gonna distribute it along ways that we think we kind of have confidence it'll get to people the right way, but we can't guarantee it's going anywhere. And public sentiment has gone against interventionism. So why don't we just take half the money and just give it to people who are victims of vaguely that country?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously you don't have to directly give it to the Taliban. I understand that trying to route through NGOs or something would be difficult, and a lot of that money could end up being claimed by the Taliban. But at least in theory, you could do that. You could alternatively, no one would do this. This is, in terms of your political communication, you're gonna hate this, but it could sit accruing interest or be invested to then be bequeathed to a future democratic, government of Afghanistan. There's a lot of issues with that too. I'm just saying, like, it wasn't like we got to do something now. I guess 9/11 families. That seems, and again, obviously all the empathy in the world for those families. Let's give them money.
Doesn't sound like it, John. Sounds like you want to take $3.5 billion out of the pockets of 9/11 victims. Welcome to politics.
There are other sources of money that we could, if we really just wanted to give them money, we could have done it in the past couple of decades. We give money to all sorts of things. It wasn't like we're just like, God, we got to find it somewhere in another country And if we do, then they'll get it. I don't know. Oh my God, okay, donkey teeth bits. I'm gonna be referencing your comment. Okay, well, look, we're gonna, we'll see. I think I agree. I think you are right in that some people in the ostensibly centrist corporate media will love this. I think that those in the right-wing corporate media will probably largely ignore it. And some of the more clever, more brazen ones will find some way to attack it. That's what I'm saying.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.